Chapter 5, Loops. So in this chapter, we'll look at an additional increment and decrement operator. We'll look at looping structures, as in the while loop, do while loop, and for loop. We'll look at nested loops and some algorithms with loops. So we have an additional increment and decrement operator from what we had studied before. We had looked at the combined operators of the plus equals and the minus equal in a previous chapter. The plus, whether it's postfixed or prefixed on a variable, will actually add 1 to the variable. So val plus plus is the same as saying val is equal to val plus 1, or val is equal to plus equal 1. Okay, so the plus can be used in a prefixed or a postfixed way. I cannot use a val plus 2 and ask it to increment it by 2. That's not possible. It only ever can increment by 1. The decrement operator is the same way. It is a minus. It subtracts 1 from the variable. So val minus is the same as val is equal to val minus 1, or val minus equals 1. Again, I cannot use the val minus 2 to decrement it by 2. It only ever can subtract 1 from it. And again, the idea of a prefix versus a postfixed setup works in a very similar way. So in this example here, we've set num equal to 4, and this is going to show that variable num is equal to 4, so it prints 4 to the screen. In a postfix, it adds 1 to 4, so it's going to print out that num is now 5. In a prefix, it adds 1 more to it, and so it's going to print out that num is equal to 6. We have a postfix decrementer, so it's going to take num and it's going to subtract 1 from it, which gives us the 5. And we have a prefix on num, and it's going to make it back to 4. And so this allowed for us to add 1 or subtract 1 from the value of num. Now, there are different behaviors with a prefix and a postfix. If I include it in a cout statement or in a math expression, if they are standalones, like in our previous example, then it doesn't matter whether it's prefixed or in postfixed mode, okay? But it will matter if it's in a math expression, okay? So in a prefix mode, the operator increments or decrements and then returns the value of the variable. But when it's in a postfix mode, the operator returns the value of the variable and then increments or decrements that value in memory. So for example, we have num and val is equal to 12. So it's going to cout val and then increment because it's postfix. So it will display the 12, but then store in memory val as 13. When I cout plus val, it's going to increment val first because it is prefixed. And so it's going to cout 14 and then display it, and 14 is stored in memory. It's going to let num equal prefixed val. So since it's prefixed, it's going to take the 14 of val, subtract 1 from it, and store 13 into memory. Num is equal to val minus, so what it's going to do is it's going to store 13 into num, which it already is, but then it's going to set val to 12. So we won't use this, but know that this behavior happens if I'm using this in a cout statement or I'm using it in some sort of math expression. So we can use it in math expressions. So num1 plus minus num2, where the idea that it will increment num1 after it has done the math, but here it will decrement num2 by 1 before it does the math. Now, I cannot find the sum of something and then increment the sum of it. So this is not something that I can do, but I can use it in a relational operator if I would want to. So let's take a look at the while loop. We studied the while loop in our previous experience with the idea that while a condition is true, I'm going to execute the body of the loop. So the while loop is a control structure that causes a statement or statements to be repeated. That idea of iteration. Remember, iteration is a single repetition of a looping structure. The general format of the while loop is we have the keyword while, test expression which must be in parentheses, and then a statement to follow. It takes one line by default. Okay, it takes one line by default. If I want more than one line to execute in my while loop, then I need to encase it in curly braces. So the while loop, how does it work? We have an expression that is being evaluated. If it's true, then the statements will execute, all right? And the expression is evaluated again. If it's false, then the loop is finished and the program will fall out of the looping structure to the next executing line of code. So here we have number is equal to 1. And while number is less than or equal to 1, well, it's going to test it first. So 1 is less than or equal to 5. That's a true statement. So therefore, it's going to print hello to the screen. It's going to increment number by 1. So it's going to increment number to a 2. So number is now equal to 2. And it's going to test again. Is 2 less than or equal to 5? It's a true statement. So it prints hello to the screen and increments number to 3. 3 is less than or equal to 5, which is a true statement, so it prints hello again, increments number to 4, and it will repeat that statement again. Is 4 less than or equal to 5? That is true, so it prints hello again, and it's going to increment number equal to 5. Now 5 is less than or equal to 5. This is a true statement, so it's going to execute one more time and print hello to the screen, and number is now going to be set equal to 6. Well, is 6 less than or equal to 5 is a false statement, so it fails the body of the loop and then it falls out and it's going to print that's all. What you need to know that's stored in memory is number is now 6. So if you're going to use that later on, you need to understand that it incremented to the 6. So the structure itself, we have the keyword while, we have the test in parentheses. There's no semicolon here at the end of the parentheses, very much like the if statement. And then we have what do I want to do in the body of the loop? And then I need to have a means of incrementing. So it will test first. If it's a valid statement, then it will execute the body of the loop, and then it's going to test again. So it will continue this cycle until it's false. What you need to understand is the while loop is a pretest loop. What does that mean? That means if the test condition is false at the first iteration, then the body of the loop may never execute. So in this example here, number is equal to 6. The loop initializer is equal to 6. Is 6 less than or equal to 5? Well, it's false at the onset, and so therefore it falls out and never executes the body of the loop. So since the while loop is a pretest loop, it may never execute. So it's important to understand that. In this scenario, it was pre-set up to do that, but if your test does not hold true, then it may never execute. Watch out for infinite loops. The idea that if I did not have my incrementer of some sort that will eventually cause my test expression to be false, we could fall into an infinite loop. And we know that that can cause other issues in the program. So here is an example. Number is equal to 1. And so is 1 less than or equal to 5? Well, yes, it is less than or equal to 5. So it's going to execute the body of the loop. But there was no way of changing number in the body of this loop, so number will always stay 1, so it will forever print hello until it could eventually just crash the computer. So the while loop, in our past programs in the last chapter, it would have been really nice if I could have gone back as I was trying to validate my numbers and have the user re-enter the number, like when we were having a negative number for a balance or for the number of checks. It would have been nice just to go back and not have to terminate the program. So we can use the while loop to validate input. So we can input validation is the process of inspecting data that is given to the program as an input and determining whether or not it's valid. And we did this in our previous experiences last year. The while loop can be used to create input routines that reject invalid data and therefore cause it to repeat until the user enters good information. So here we have an example, enter a number less than 10. So if the user enters a number less than 10, while 9 is greater than or equal to, so let's say the user enters the number 9, 9 is not greater than or equal to 10, okay? And so it's not going to execute the body of the loop. But if the user enters, let's say 11, okay, they ask for a number less than 10, is 11 greater than or equal to 10? Yes, it's true that 11 is greater than or equal to 10. And so it's going to say, hey, invalid entry. Enter a number less than 10. So they give the person the opportunity again to enter a valid number. If they enter a 12, 12 is not greater than or equal to 10. That's a true statement. So it's going to say invalid entry again. And it's going to ask the user once again to please enter a number less than 10. So if the user enters an 8, is 8 greater than or equal to 10? It's a false statement. So then it will fall out of the body of the loop and move on through the program. But we get stuck here as long as the user does not enter a valid expression. So here we have a compound statement. So the idea, how many players do you wish per team? And so they have the chance to enter information. As long as team players is less than the minimum players or team players is greater than the maximum players, then it says you should have at least X number of players, but no more than max number of players per team. And so then they ask the user to please enter the number of team players again. So the idea that if it was outside of the range, okay, then it was asking for another value. Maybe they entered a negative number, or maybe I was looking for 15 players and they put in 16. This wasn't going to allow them to do that.